artist, activist, and according to the Department of Justice, a terrorist. So I found the perfect place. All right, to kind of start things off, I thought I'd tell a little story. When I was a child, I used to go to the shore a lot. And while there, I liked going on the boardwalk, and there were nice amusement parks. And there was this one ride, I think there was one like at Coney Island, called the parachute drop. And it would lift you way high up in the air and then basically let you go, and you'd go flying downwards. And one day, I took my little cousin onto that ride, and the parachute ride is going up and up and up. I don't think they have them anymore. Too many people died on them. The parachute ride's going up and up and up, and it hits that very top, and my poor little cousin with a worried face looks at me and says, "I wish I was anywhere but here." Well, when I'm asked to talk about the current state of democracy, I wish I was anywhere but here. I don't know how else to describe it, right? And the terrible thing is, and the reason why, is because I'm so conflicted about it all. I have such ambivalence. Because on one hand, I know there isn't any democracy. And I know that if you interrogate it just a little bit, it really becomes a rather soft idea. But the thing is I still love it. And so I always want to give it a pass. Right? You know, when I start talking about democracy, I start to understand how Christians feel about God and Jesus. Right? They've got no evidence of it. There's no really good reason for it. There's not a, argument you can make in any kind of empirical or evidentiary sense. But I like it, so I'm going to believe it. I'm going to have faith. And that's where I kind of feel like we are with democracy right now. It's one of those, and there's a few others that get a pass, right? Humanism, it gets a pass, right? And we all know about this one, because we all remember, going through the 70s, 80s, 90s, the destruction of all of these great meta-narratives, right? They all had to come down. And a lot didn't get a pass. Civilization, well, that idea's kind of gone. Progress, there's a good one. That idea, kind of gone. I mean, that's when even the right can't even bring up anymore, right? That one came so badly apart. And ones that I miss, like utopia. Oh, how I'm waiting for that utopia, to have that moment, right, where there's that perfect equality. I don't even care what kind it is. It could be a Fourier style, a nice pre-industrial one where mainly what we worry about is sex and food. But no, we can't have utopia either, because what's utopia for one person we know is not utopia for another person. So that one kind of goes away. The right kept it, hence how we got Reagan, right? While the left is going, well, we can't really talk about utopias. We don't really have a vision because, they're deterministic. They tend to be racist in nature. They tend to be classist. They have gender bias. Reagan was like, oh, I got a vision. I got a way things could look, and it's going to be good. Right? But, we walked away from that one. That didn't get a pass. Gender, that's kind of got a middle one, right? And happily, a lot of the gender narrative is gone. Don't miss it a bit. And I'm really glad to see that there is a critical mass that can leave like, well, we don't need these structured ideas of gender with hard definitions, even if Sarah Palin wants to give us more of them. But good old democracy, humanism, social justice, we just can't bear to get rid of them. We need them, right? What are you going to do about something like Darfur if we don't have an idea of human rights? Even though we'll turn around the very next day and say, this universalist idea of humans, it's ridiculous. But I can't give it up, right? It's this bizarre ambivalence. I can't give it up. I just... when someone says, why shouldn't we be torturing people? Where there's this thing called human dignity, I don't know if I necessarily believe it if you catch me in a critical moment of my life. But when I'm asked about that, I seem to really believe it at that point. And when someone tells me with democracy, democracy is something we should be fighting for. It's an end to our resistance. There's times when I really believe it. But I don't know if I really believe it. Right? We can go down the big list. And certainly most notable right away is that the kind of free market capitalism we have now is in direct contradiction to the goals of democracy. How do you get these two things together? They don't. You can't have unfettered, unaccountable, free institutions whose only goal is to be these little profit machines, and then on the other side say, well, you know what we need is a government that holds institutions accountable so that the people en masse have a degree of control. These things don't go together. They're opposites. And it makes me, again, want to believe in democracy, because I sure know I don't believe in free market global capitalism. And we can always say, and that's the beauty of that. That kind of always gets a pass. You know, I don't know what's free about the free market yet. I haven't understood that. But it's still one of those connections, right? And one of these contradictions in this connection. I don't understand it. But still, I'm like David Duchovny and UFOs, baby. I want to believe. But I'm having the hardest time. That contradicts this idea of a citizen, right? We're all good citizens. At least I think we are. I mean, we're all here. We're participating right now. So I'm thinking, well, that's a good idea. But at the same time, when you have, again, this contradiction that I started with, but when you have monopolization of the media in the hands of elite that have very specific interests, how is the citizen supposed to educate him or herself in a manner that they can fully participate in an informed way? How, when our public schools and our universities are either totally decaying, as in most of the urban schools, or in the case of our better research institutions being taken over by private interests, or having huge chunks of it shut down as classified because of military interests, where do we get the information to perform this role as citizen? And I'm not the first one to say this by any means. This goes all the way back to Walter Lippmann in the 1920s. Right? Already then people were going, yeah, democracy. But I really want to believe it. I want to believe it. So, you know, it's one of these things where I'm going to just have to kind of be that Christian, only about politics. Because I don't know what else to say. If not, what else are we resisting for? Right? What are we hoping for? What are we really saying when we say, I believe in social justice? It becomes confusing to me. But I like it. I like the idea. It means something to me. It's motivating. It has tremendous affect. And I want to get behind it. I'm a believer. I'm a participator. But if I'm asked for real, is democracy the best thing, the working thing? Again, I got to say, I don't know. I don't know where the space of democracy is. Is it this? Do we need foundations to create the space of democracy? Is it going to be, oh, here's the good one. It's going to be the World Wide Web. That's where we're going to get more democracy from, right? Because we'll all be making these special connections and sending email and reading news we could otherwise not get, find information that otherwise would be hidden. Everybody gets a voice. Of course, if you have lots of money and you can do cross-campaigning and such like, you get a much bigger voice. But, you know, perhaps we can believe that, yeah, that could be a space for democracy too, that there won't be the same hierarchies of what is invisible and what is visible. In spite of it, I want to believe. I want to believe, want to have that faith. And sometimes I worry what's going to happen if we stop believing. What happens if we stop believing in democracy, in humanism, in human rights, in human dignity, in social justice? In spite of the fact there are these crazy universals, and I would bet almost every person in this audience has spent a good deal of their life trying to undermine universals, to show them as the dangerous ideological principles that they are. But in this case, we have to live, perhaps, with our own contradictions. And in spite of the fact that I see this and know this, it's a contradiction that in this case I think I'm willing to go on with. So while I may be quite pessimistic intellectually, I can still say I will go on, I will not surrender my agency because I have optimism of the will. Thank you very much.